World history between vision and reality. Since 1918, the products of historical scholarship have become increasingly sophisticated and numerous, but the problem of how to write world history has remained unresolved. The need to find a solution, however, has grown more urgent with each of the many steps taken toward a truly global world, with the many centuries still ahead of us. In the absence of a generally accepted conceptual scheme which could provide the framework of unity, those attempting to write world history have so far used three approaches: the multiple cultures model, in which all cultures are subject to the same developmental pattern; the progress model, now on a global scale; and the world system model. The multiple cultures model. Since the ancient period, this model has been intermittently the preferred way to discern patterns and meanings in the course of history. Its reliance on a universal cyclical developmental pattern for the many separate collective entities made it in recent centuries a readily available anti-progressive historical interpretation. Its pattern, roughly mimicking the organic life cycle, also gave the model some claim at empiricism. Spengler. Oswald Spengler, Sensation and Substance. In 1918, the most sensational attempt to break new ground in writing world history came with Oswald Spengler's The Decline of the West. Actually, many of its elements had been known prior to World War I. Its philosophical ideas derived from Goethe's organicism, Schopenhauer's pessimism, and Nietzsche's vitalism. Its theme of decadence had been voiced by Jacob Burckhardt, who feared the consequences of a radical egalitarianism, who predicted Western civilization's decay for racial reasons, and, of course, by those who pictured world history as the graveyard of those elites whose fate determined the rise and fall of civilizations and societies. While its destruction of the Eurocentric view had been advocated earlier, those students were introduced to cross-cultural comparative history and were admonished by a sign in seminar rooms that here no one must speak of progress. And so you have, again, the ideas derived from Goethe's organicism, that is Schopenhauer's pessimism, and Nietzsche's vitalism. And so, Spengler contributed creative imagination and a prophetic language. He found many people in the West receptive, disillusioned by the horrors of modern warfare, and, in the case of the Germans, bitter over their defeat. Their mood made them accept a world history without hope and good news, one in which Spengler's view signified a revolution in historiography. The traditional Eurocentric world history was then replaced by one without any center at all. Spengler presented world history as the story of what he termed high cultures, of which so far there have been 8: Indian culture, Babylonian culture, Chinese culture, Egyptian culture, Arabic culture, Mexican culture, the classical culture, and Western culture. High cultures were those among the many cultures that, because of their special dynamics, brought forth outstanding achievements in time and in space. The other cultures, as well as the high cultures, after their creative careers had ended, existed in a static, one might call historyless state, that is, no writing of history within those cultures. That assertion was based on viewing every high culture as an organic entity with a life cycle of a determined length and with no purpose beyond its unfolding. Oswald Spengler said in 1940 in his writing Today in Destiny, quote, "A culture is born in the moment when a great soul awakens out of the proto-spirituality of ever-childish humanity and detaches itself, a form from the formless, a bounded and mortal thing from the boundless and enduring. It blooms on the soil of an exactly definable landscape, to which plant-wise it remains bound. It dies when this soul has actualized the full sum of its possibilities, in the shape of peoples, languages, dogmas, arts, states, sciences, and reverts into the proto-soul. This soul also gave a culture its basic, unique, and unchanging attitudes towards life. Cultural diffusion could cause only minor superficial modifications in cultures. The reading public was fascinated by Spengler's general pattern for the cultural life cycle of high cultures. Again, the dreaded decadence could not be avoided because cultures were organic entities whose vitality peaked and then declined. Spengler termed the declining phase of high cultures the age of civilization, when, quote, "at last in the gray dawn of civilization, the fire in the soul dies down," end quote. Tradition loses its effectiveness. Vitality and creativity are fading. The megapolis depopulates the countryside and corrupts the morality and civic mindedness of the city dwellers. The arts and crafts of religious cults and a secondary religiosity replace genuine religious faith, and Caesars rule militaristic states and initiate imperialist ventures. When we take a look at Spengler's typical life cycle of high cultures, we see that there is a historieless period, and then we see that there is an ascendancy and flourishing of vitality, creativity. And then we reach a peak of vitality, creativity in the life cycle of a high culture. And then after the ascendancy and flourishing, we have a period of civilization, which is decadence, after the peak of vitality, creativity, back down to a historieless period again. Then we have Toynbee's two models. The publication of Spengler's work nearly caused the English historian Arnold Toynbee to give up his own plan to trace the fate of the world's cultures, until a closer look convinced him that Spengler's approach was not his at all. Both men did deal with similar collectives. Spengler called them cultures, and Toynbee called them civilizations, and viewed world history as a sequence of these entities. Yet Arnold Toynbee had no taste for souls of cultures, uniform cultural lifespans, and organicist parallels. Civilizations, rather than representing the unfolding of unique souls, were the results of the dialectic relationship between the challenge of the environment and the response to the environment by a group of human beings. The appropriateness and creativity of the response determined whether one of the world's noteworthy civilizations was born or not. Once launched, such a civilization followed a typical course. And with painstaking care and much erudition, Arnold Toynbee identified, analyzed, and described more than 20 civilizations, making his study of history, published between 1934 and 1939, universal in scope. But after years of study, Toynbee found history as an endless sequence of civilizations, a sterile concept. In his seventh volume, he dropped civilization as the basic structural element of human life and substituted religion for that. The religions of mankind, the phenomenon of religion, provided the soil from which civilizations grew, not the other way around. The religions that emerged in the actual age also could transcend civilizations and thus permitted patterns and meaning reaching beyond a single transitory civilization. Indeed, history as the vision of a deity at work in the world even allowed for progress. But Toynbee's progress referred to the world proceeding toward the fusion of the great religions, perhaps even to a world civilization and peace. In Toynbee's scheme of civilizations, we see a timeline that there is a challenge evoked. During a period of growth, the challenge evokes response by a creative minority with the masses following. Mimesis. We have an increasing control over environment, and that yields human self-determination, and it is categorized as a period of classes. Then after the period of growth is a time of troubles, where the creative minority becomes the dominant minority. Failure to develop further leads to idolization of existing institutions. It is a turbulent transition. From the period of growth to the time of troubles, we then enter a universal state of internal strife that ends. Peace and stability and prosperity dominate, and no classes are left. And then we have the end of the timeline, where it is called the interregnum, where the internal proletariat, or the creative group excluded from influence, together with external proletariat, foes with greater vitality and creativity, finally destroy the state.